Can you please tell us a bit about yourself and your company?
Hi, I'm Scot Marken, and I am the founder and CEO of Redefined. Redefined is a very specialized educational consulting firm that exclusively supports students who are neurodivergent, students with complex mental health issues, and students with learning disabilities with their post-high school plans and experience, which is typically college. And I support students who may have had a non-traditional high school experience. Perhaps they're students that have had a therapeutic experience, residential at some point. I often support students that have co-occurring issues. Autism is the most, prevalent diagnosis for individuals I support, and then also individuals with complex mental health issues. And that really fits in with who I am as a person. My background is actually as a nonprofit CEO for 20 years, and I had a focus on disabilities, specifically mental health and developmental disabilities. So I bring that to the families that I support and approach everyone, as a unique individual, as a unique family, and develop customized services for them.
Please tell us a bit more about your approach and scope of services.
Well, everyone is on their unique journey, and I provide, no pun intended, a spectrum of support where often at the beginning of the spectrum for students who are still in high school, I do a very extensive college readiness assessment, and they either are coming saying they want to go to college and that's their plan, and then I will assess where they're at in terms of, of course, academics, but their independent living skills, their self-advocacy skills, social emotional skills, and I'll help to develop a roadmap for them from where they are now till going to going to college and then being successful in college. And then there are other students that, they're not sure. They're not sure where they're at. They're not sure what's next. So I'll also use that assessment to help them understand where I think they're at right now and what would be the most effective path for them. And then I do support individuals also who are in college. I frequently support them with their accommodations, finding wraparound supports. So it really runs the gamut.
Can you tell us a bit more about the assessment you've created?
The assessment that I do it's quite comprehensive. In some ways I do it, if people are familiar with, a 360 employee review, meaning that I get feedback about the student, from the family, and from numerous people that know the student in different aspects of their life. So it might be the therapist, it might be a teacher, it might be a dance coach, and that gives me, a sense of how somebody is showing up and how they present themselves in different circumstances, because I think we all, show up differently depending on who we are often engaging with. And then I put that all together, and then I'll give them, my recommendation of, where I think they're at, and talk through what they see as some of their plans and how they may go about achieving that. Or if I feel right now that would be difficult to achieve, I will share that as well. As part of the work that I do, I'll look at whether I think that somebody does need a specialized support program. Because somebody is autistic does not mean that they need an autism support program. It also could mean that an autism support program that's offered at amazing schools with amazing directors and staff may not be sufficient for someone's needs. So as part of that work, I'll look at what is the type of support that I believe people need, and whether that's something they can work on and grow skills prior to going to college, whether it would be transition support or ongoing compensatory support that they would benefit from throughout college.
What advice do you have for families where the student is really interested in a school without a formal autism support program?
Now, a lot of times I'll hear that I really want to go to a particular school and there's not an autism support program. So can I consider that? And I would say that, it completely depends on the individual. There are many individuals who are autistic who would benefit very much from autism programs. There's other individuals that don't need that level of support. Maybe they don't need any support. Perhaps, they may want accommodations, academic accommodations, residential accommodations. That is something that would not be part of an autism support program, and it would be outside. Perhaps they're going to go ahead and need some tutoring. The tutoring is not really, for the most part, going to be delivered content tutoring from an autism support program. And so finding the support that may exist on campus and whether that is sufficient for the student's needs, and sharing that, getting that information, and if not, finding some other types of private supports that would work for the particular student, whether it's tutoring, whether it's social coaching, whether it's executive functioning planning. One thing that I do a lot of is related to mental health support and finding and vetting mental health providers for students who are starting at college, because while the College Counseling Center provides, some really vital services, they're not set up to provide ongoing therapeutic support, and particularly for individuals that may have complex mental health profiles. So I'll often find that. And so, I really will think through and talk to the family and the student in particular about what type of support the student is open to. But ultimately, it's the student themselves who's going to be the one that's going to participate in the autism support program, or show up at the tutoring, or go to the writing center. So the buy-in of the student is an important part of figuring out their college experience and potential success at college.
You also help families research and explore support available on a campus of interest, right?
So for most students and their families, the first type of support that they would be looking for would be what support is available on campus. Typically that support will be free, and it's also, embedded in the college. So there's often, an understanding of the college culture, the administration of how that works. I will go initially and speak to the Disability Services Office or Accessibility Services, whatever it's called. In many cases, they're not very large, and they do focus on accommodations under the ADA. And I'll use that as a starting place to see where are other supports possibly available on campus for students. And then I'll do some, research on my own, connect with colleagues. So some examples is, let's talk about tutoring. So pretty much every college is going to have some sort of tutoring that is available. Now, a lot of the tutoring is done by peers, so it's done by an upperclassman who has been successful in the class and understands the materials. Now, there's definitely a lot of benefits to working with peers. At the same time, some of the unique aspects of an individual who is autistic might not be a good fit with someone who is a peer tutor who has no understanding of autism or understanding of neurodiversity and how to support somebody effectively. So just as an example, a lot of times you'll see that tutoring centers have drop-in peer support. So what I'll do is I will check to see, even though it says it's drop-in peer support, are there actually any professional specialists that have a better understanding of neurodiversity and or learning disabilities that might be a better fit? For someone who is uncomfortable a lot of times with transition, rather than having drop-in tutoring, which could be certainly very stressful, I'll try to see if it could be set up so that the person can have the same tutor for the entire semester and work that out in advance.
Many colleges offer academic coaching and support for executive functioning as well, right?
For some schools that don't have autism support programs, you may find ongoing academic coaching that could be available once a week. Typically that's it. Sometimes you can get, 2 times a week. Also, many times there is sort of informal case management that may exist at a college, and reaching out to the student affairs office may be a place to start with, and that's something that could be, particularly beneficial.
Many colleges offer counseling services related to mental health and well-being too, right?
And then going back to college counseling, or in terms of mental health therapy, one of the things to ask, I think, if you're a student seeking mental health therapy is, are there any therapists that are on staff that have experience supporting and working with clients who are neurodivergent? And if not, they may be able to provide you with a list of resources in the community, or someone like myself would go ahead and do some vetting and researching for mental health therapists. Because one of the biggest misperceptions is that somebody could just automatically stay with a mental health therapist who they work with locally, but due to licensing issues, in many cases, they cannot.
And how about supporting social connections?
One of the first things I do want to just say related to social skills and social involvement is that it's based on what does the student themselves want in terms of their social life and their social engagement. I do find a lot of times that parents may really want more social interaction for their children than the children may want themselves. And again, it's a spectrum. So there's many people who are very social. There's some other people that may not be that social, and yet they are still happy. So that's something to find out on an individual basis. And I have had several students this past year, this is a growing area of what I do, is to seek out a social peer mentor for them, and that typically will involve finding someone who's part of a school community. It could be virtual, but I find that for social issues, having somebody who knows the campus, more boots on the ground, is typically effective. And I would reach out to various grad schools, perhaps social work, psychology, something like that, and advertise for a position to support a student with implementing those social plans, providing them feedback based on what's happening at the school. And that could range from one time a week to a couple times per week.
Accommodations work quite differently in college than in high school. Can you please touch on some of the key differences?
So one of the differences in support between high school and college is that in college, the support is typically very decentralized. And there's potentially 6, 7, 8 departments that you may be getting support from, in addition to if you go to a school that has an autism support program. One of the biggest misperceptions is that an IEP, a 504 plan, or if a student is in a private high school that might have an individual support plan, is that they transfer over to college. They don't, and sometimes colleges will use them, but it's not the primary type of documentation that is needed. So it's very important for students to understand what type of support is available and what is not. One of the things is to go look at the website of schools that you're interested in, because it's becoming much more nuanced, where you're seeing that different type of documentation is needed for different types of diagnoses, as well as understanding what types of accommodations to ask for. There are some accommodations that you're going to see in high school that should, with the proper documentation, easily transfer that you can get in college, such as extra time for an exam. There's also some that are much more difficult to get that students have in high school, and it's just not very common in college. And there are some in college that you might not have in high school. But many students who are neurodivergent could benefit from having priority registration for classes. And that enables somebody to, look at a schedule in advance, look at how they learn. If there's someone with ADHD and it would be very difficult and challenging to focus for a 3-hour lecture class versus, having a class that is a couple of times per week, when you choose that class could make a big difference, depending on if you take medication. So that's something that is an accommodation. In many colleges, again, priority registration for classes, that is something that students and families may not have thought about because it doesn't exist in high school.
Can you also touch on how things change for parents when their students head to college?
So, in addition to what I do professionally, I am the parent of a neurodivergent college-age young adult. And so I have been through this and I go through this on a, daily basis to the extent that my child is interested in sharing information with me. And that's one of the biggest changes that you will see when a student goes to college, is that typically when a student's younger and a student is, in high school, the parent is the lead in terms of interacting with the school, in terms of stepping in if the student is not able on their own to get the accommodations or other types of supports. And so that really changes once a student turns 18, as well as once a student goes to college. So one thing to think about when you're preparing for college is, what is it going to look like when the student goes to college? And to what extent does the parenting role need to change? And parents, typically it's, backing off more and building more independence in their child. And that's something that actually I think should start from the time someone's a teenager, and that slowly to go build some, ability to self-advocate, as opposed to the parents just saying, okay, I know how to fix this, I'm going to go ahead and fix this. And I'm saying that both with my professional hat on and my personal hat on. But ultimately, the student has to be the one who's going to reach out to disability services for accommodations. It's not like an IEP where the school district will call a meeting or the school will call a meeting that everyone gets together. You also have, when the student turns 18, you have the issue of HIPAA in terms of what information the student is willing to share with anyone, including the parents. So you maybe will think about that with regards to, mental health treatment or any type of somatic health treatment. And then there's another change, which is called, it's an issue related to FERPA, which is an acronym that relates to the educational rights of a student when they're in college. And the educational rights of a student are something that it's their privacy. And so the parents don't receive information unless the student decides that the student is going to waive FERPA, which will allow the parents to receive some information. No school essentially is going to have a professor speak to a parent and work out some problem in the class. I've seen where you'll have that families have access to see grades, they can go speak to the registrar's office, things like that. But it is up to the student, and many families, it is a good idea to encourage the student to waive FERPA before they go to college, so there can be a collaboration with parents. I think that one of the misperceptions is that a student goes to college and they're immediately independent. I do think they have way more independence and need more independence than when they're living at home in college, but yet they're still a growing young adult, and there's certain areas of their life where they are less independent, and it will take still some time. And so understanding what your role is as a parent, and as opposed to doing everything, how you can work collaboratively to support the student doing it and offer advice, or in some instances realizing that it could be a great idea that you want to share, but maybe your child is not open to taking that suggestion from you. So there's not just what's the message, but it's who delivers the message, when is the message delivered, and hopefully it's a collaborative process that is able to see the student successfully transition to college, and then to really go ahead and just soar and be happy.
Thank you to Scot Marken and Ed Redefined. Please subscribe to Inclusive Academia.